I am live. Today is Friday, the 4th of July, 2025, and I am reading The Last Barrier by Reshad Feilds, a Sufi journey. It was published 1976, and it plays largely in Turkey. We are here in chapter number 8, and I have already read the first part of it, and I continue here. The following morning I tried once again to pay my respects to Shamsi Tabriz. There had been a change in the weather and the ice had turned to slush, so that the dirty streets were running mud. The women were picking their way through the puddles, holding their long skirts above their ankles. There was a light drizzle and I was reminded of a typical winter day in London. Coming around the corner by the square, I became aware that someone was following me. I had a definite sense that I was in danger. Yes, I was unable either to slow down or to quicken my step. Yet, soon my unknown companion was walking only a pace or so behind me. The tension became worse and suddenly broken when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Spinning around, I fully expected to be attacked. I stopped myself just as I was about to hit him. I had seen this man before. Instead of assaulting me, the stranger threw his arms around me and embraced me as though I was a long-lost friend. In the strength of his embrace, and due to the fact that I was half buried in his overcoat, I had no chance to look at his face. He was speaking to me in rapid Turkish, and all I could understand was the word dost, which means friend in Persian. Finally, he let me go, placed his hand over his heart and said, "Istanbul, Istanbul." It was the bookseller I had met in Istanbul when I had been looking for the sheikh. That was truly amazing. What on earth was he doing in the back streets of Konya that morning? We couldn't communicate very well because of the language problem, but this didn't seem to bother him in the slightest. He took me by the arm, talking to me all the way in Turkish, and before I knew what was happening, we had arrived in the square of the tomb of Shams-i Tabriz. He walked me quickly to the other side by the iron gates, and then, letting go of my arm, he put his hand on his heart and bowed deeply. I did the same. When he led me towards the door of the tomb, once again, then he led me towards the door of the tomb. That, once again, it was locked. He looked puzzled and tried the lock carefully. Then he went around to the back of the building and I heard him talking to someone. Soon he returned, and after several minutes with my Turkish phrase book and dictionary, I gathered that the man who had the key to the tomb was ill, and so it would not be opened that day. This time I did not become depressed. The presence of the bookseller was significant enough, and he seemed as certain as I was that we could not go inside the building. He made all sorts of apologies and pointed to the word tomorrow in my Turkish-English dictionary. In the meantime, he indicated I was to go with him. His manner made it more of an order than an invitation, so I followed obediently as he hurried through the streets. We walked for a long time in the drizzling rain until we arrived at a small block of apartments. Beckoning to me to follow, he went upstairs to the second floor. Outside the door was a pile of shoes. And he pointed to mine as he took off his own. I did the same, and then he knocked. The door was opened a crack, and a woman's face peered out at us. "Ah," she said. The chain was undone and the door opened. Everything had happened so fast that I had not had time to think. But somehow it was not a surprise to find that the room was jammed with about 40 men ranging in age from the late teens to one very old man, bent almost double, who might have been 90 years old. The bookseller beckoned to me and a space was made for me on the sofa. Pointing around the room, he smiled, saying, "Dervish, dervish." Then he was shown to a large chair standing by itself at one end of the room. As he sat down, all the others in the room bowed, touching their foreheads to the floor. He began to chant, his voice oddly thin and nasal. The loud response from the men in the room was a strange contrast. I could not understand the words he was chanting, but at the end of each line they all responded, "Huala, huala." Soon a very large tambourine was produced, and some of the dervishes began a rhythmic clapping, their bodies swaying in time with the music. The two men on either side of me took my hands in theirs. There was no time to stop and question what was going on. I was transported into the rhythm and soon found myself joining in with the responses. The rhythm grew stronger and faster, and by now all the dervishes were holding hands and swaying back and forth. Those who had been sitting on chairs and the sofa were kneeling on the floor, and the tambourine player had been joined by another musician playing a long bamboo flute. Every now and again the bookseller would change the rhythm by banging his hand on his knee, or he would raise the pitch of the responses by chanting higher and higher. After a while he banged on the floor with the flat of his hand. Immediately everyone began to chant, "Allah, Allah." A young man stood up in the middle of the circle. I was doing my best to join in and to watch at the same time, which made things difficult. The bookseller caught my eye, smiled, and gave me a wink as the man in the center of the circle bowed to him, a deep bow, almost to the ground. He began to turn, slowly at first, his arms folded across his chest. Little by little, the spin grew faster. As the young man unfolded his arms, the rhythm increased, and the drumming became more and more intense. I was wearing a heavy woolen jacket and found myself running with sweat. I was kneeling in an awkward position. My legs were cramping. I would have loved to stop, but the men on either side carried me forward and backwards in the rhythm until I lost all sense of my body. All I could hear was the call of Allah, reverberating through me. All I could see was a light spinning, spreading everywhere. The dervish who was spinning was completely balanced, with his head tilted back and to the left. His eyes were gleaming. Occasionally he would cry out. I felt that at any moment I might lose consciousness, and there would be nothing left but the sound of the world and the intense light that continued to grow. But then, just as at the peak of intensity, the dervish stopped spinning quite suddenly. He did not seem to be giddy at all. He just came to a halt, crossed his arms over his chest and bowed deeply. The drumming stopped, the secret died down, and the men on either side of me were kissing my hands. The room vibrated with love and joy, as though each person were greeting the others after a long separation. Following this, I was greeted by each person in the room, and as coffee was being served, a young man introduced himself to me. "My name is Farid," he said. "I speak English, and I will be happy to act as translator for you and our sheikh." The room quickly fell silent as everyone began to listen to our conversation. "Please give him my thanks," I began, for allowing me to be here with you all." The sheikh accepted my gratitude solemnly, and it was not necessary for Farid to translate his reply. Everyone in the room smiled at me with great kindness. I had some trouble in phrasing the question I most wanted to ask. "Please ask the sheikh," I said finally, whether he is the sheikh I was sent to find in Istanbul. And if he is, why did he not tell me then?" The question was translated, and the sheikh responded with a roar of laughter. He leaned forward and spoke with Farid. Our sheikh says, "Of course I am. Why did you not tell me then that I had accomplished my goal and allow me to pay my respects to you? There is a saying in Konya, 'We will try them until we know.' I wanted to find out whether it was Allah's wish that we meet or not. I knew that if it was, he would guide us to be together again, and so I was quite happy to wait." "But I was told that the sheikh worked in a tailor's shop, and yet you work in a bookshop. How is that?" The sheikh smiled again. "You must understand that I never heard of the man who sent you from England, and I have never worked in the tailor shop. His information was not quite correct, but then you found me anyway, and that is all that matters." Each time a sentence was translated, all the dervishes leant forward so as not to miss a word of the conversation. For the next hour or so, the atmosphere in the room was electric. The sheikh explained that he had never heard of Hamid and denied any intuitive knowledge that we were going to meet. I asked him if he had come to Konya at that time for any special reason, and he told me that he came quite frequently to see his friends, and that was the only reason. "Why were you walking towards the square this morning?" I persisted. "To visit Shamsi Tabriz. The same reason as yourself," he replied. "Whenever I have the chance, I always go to pay my respects. But that was the first time I've ever found the tomb closed." I told him how I had gone there the day before, and all that had transpired from that moment, trying to explain as simply as possible why I was searching, and the things that I had done during my life that had led me to this moment. "You are too serious," he said. "Why are you so serious? Do you think that he has not got a sense of humor? He must be laughing very much at this moment to see an Englishman here with us, asking all these questions, when he knew at the beginning that all this was going to happen. Now tell me, is this the first time that you have met the dervishes?" I explained that my original object had been to find out if the dervishes had any knowledge of healing, since that was a subject that had absorbed me a great deal. But since then, so many other things had happened that finally I was looking only to find my real self, to discover what use I could be in the world. "Ah," he said, "now, if you had searched just to try to gather some information for yourself, you would never have found us. But that is why your teacher kept you waiting for so long. No doubt he will have told you that knowledge is given and not acquired, and that we do not welcome people who come to try to take knowledge. We will even lead them astray and send them on useless errands so that they will not find what they are looking for. Such things as healing are very interesting, but we must remember that the first thing of all is God, from whom everything else follows. Dervishes are proud people, and as you know, their meetings are illegal in this country. You have been allowed here only because of the sincerity of your motive." I was still puzzled. How if the sheikh had not heard of Hamid, had Hamid heard of him? I asked about this as carefully as I could. The question sent the whole room into fits of laughter. "But why do you laugh?" I asked plaintively. "If you were not from the West," the sheikh replied, "you would not have asked the question in the first place. The answer is easy for all of us here, but it is not possible for me to tell you. If I tried to explain, then I would have to explain with reason, and the answer has nothing to do with reason." The answer has nothing to do with reason. Although the young man who was translating for us occasionally had difficulty finding the correct English words, he seemed thoroughly familiar with concepts that I was finding so difficult. I tried again with a different question. "I still don't understand. How did Hamid know of you and know that I would find you?" The sheikh was silent for a moment, then he said, "I will tell you a story. If you can understand it, you will have the answer to your question. In the beginning of time there was the Word, and the Word was spoken by God, and the Word was be. From that moment everything started to come into being. In that moment all creation that would ever be simply was, and in that Word was all that was necessary for everything we see to come about, and for us to see beyond this world into the real world. So in the beginning is everything, yet what you see here and now is not the real world. What I say to you, if you listen to the form of the words, it's not real either. If on the other hand you listen to the sighing of the wind, you will hear the message of truth. If you send your message on the wind, then sooner or later someone will be attentive enough to pick it up. You cannot necessarily know who will hear, and yet, in reality, there is only him, and so it is he himself who hears the message, and it is he himself who sends it. Now listen to the sound of the wind. The sheikh put his finger to his lips, and the room grew very still. Listen, he repeated, and you will hear the carrying sound of telepathy. Gradually, the room filled with sound, the sound that began all sounds. It was a sound, who, and it was the sound behind the wind. It was everywhere. I was not searching anymore. The sound carried the search, and the message itself was the sound, who. The art of transmitting an idea from one person to another across space is just another subtle form of language, and all language comes from the first command of God when he brought the world into being. That is why the dervishes had laughed at my question. It was not a matter of whether Hamid had heard of what the sheikh at all. That was not important. It was not a matter of whether Hamid had heard of the sheikh at all. That was not important. What was important was that we were together, all of us, and the mystery behind all of this was not the key that would unlock the door. The moment itself would unlock the door. Although I had asked a question about communication, what I had really asked was, why am I here, please? And so the answer could be given in the way that it was. There seemed to be one more question to ask the sheikh. It was a question that had been on my mind for a long time. What, I asked, is a dervish? He looked at me, and there was a long silence before he spoke again. We speak in story form, as you know, he said, and one of the reasons for this is that you can listen to a story over and over again, for each moment is different and will not repeat itself. Therefore the story will mean something different each time you study it. It depends on the mood you are in, the place you are looking at the story from, the time of day, many things, and so the story that I tell you will have no interpretation. You must listen to it, study it, and then one day you may understand. The sheikh continued. Once there was a swarm of mosquitoes. The wind blew, and since the window of the sheikh's house was open, all the mosquitoes blew in with the wind. On the other side of the room was another open window, and the mosquitoes that had blown in one window were blown out the other, all except for one. That one landed on the sheikh's wife's knee. The sheikh smiled, raised his hand and killed it. The mosquito had died, became the dervish. The mosquito that died became the dervish. With that he stood up and, saying a prayer over all of us, brought the meeting to a close. Beckoning to me and Farid, he led us out into the street. I have something to say to you, he began. I'm going to return to Istanbul tonight. If you like, you may come with me. That is very kind of you, but I promised to visit the 3 tombs, and I don't think I should leave until I have done so. The tombs have been closed to you twice, he said, so perhaps it is not intended that you go there to them just yet. There may be something that you must do before you will be quite ready for that moment. If you like, you and Farid and I can drive to Istanbul together. It is up to you. The young man was having a hard time concealing his excitement, but I did not know what to do, for I was torn between a longing to go on talking with the sheikh and a feeling that I should stay in Konya to carry out my instructions. I will leave from the square at 7 o'clock this evening. If you are there, we can go together. With that, he took the translator's arm, they waved to me, and I was left alone. That's the end of chapter 8. Have a lovely Friday.